violence to force her to marriage with him, and they doubt not that she will keep her word. However, they believe that she will grow tired out at last when she finds out there is no hope whatever of a rescue. The ships are being built for a long sea voyage, for Sweyn is going to lead them to join the Viking Hasting in the Mediterranean, and has promised his men the plunder of countries 10 times richer than France or England. With so long an expedition in view, they may well think that the Lady Freda's resolution will soon give way, and that she may come to see that the position of the wife of a bold Viking is 1,000 times preferable to that of a captive. Many of the men loudly expressed their wonder why she would refuse the love of so valiant a warrior as Sweyn. The news was at once good and bad. Edmund did not fear Freda's resolution giving way for a long time, but the news that Sweyn intended to carry her upon so distant an expedition troubled him. It was of course possible that he might intercept them with the Dragon at the mouth of the Maas, but it was uncertain whether the ship would arrive at the mouth of the Rhine in time to be brought round before the Northmen descended. The length of her voyage would depend entirely on the wind. Were this favourable when she reached the mouth of the Seine, a week would carry her to her destination. Should it be unfavourable, there was no saying how long the voyage would last. The risk was so great that Edmund determined to make an effort to rouse the country against the Danes, and to fall upon them in their encampment. But the task would, he knew, be a hard one, for the dread of the Danes was so great that only in large towns was any resistance to them ever offered. However, he determined to try, for if the Northmen succeeded in getting to the sea, the pursuit would indeed be a long one, and many weeks and even months might elapse before he could again come up to them. On the following day the rest of the party arrived, and leaving the forest, Edmund proceeded with them through the country, visiting every village and endeavouring to rouse the people to attack the Danes. But the news that the dreaded marauders were so near excited terror only. The assurances of Edmund that there was much rich plunder in their camp, which would become the property of those who destroyed them, excited but a feeble interest. The only point in the narrative which excited their contentment was the news that the Danes were building ships and were going to make their way down to the sea. "In heaven's name let them go," was the cry. "Who would interfere with the flight of a savage beast? If they are going down the river they'll scarcely land to scatter and plunder the country, and he would be mad indeed who would seek them when they are disposed to let us alone." Finding his efforts vain in the country near the forest, Edmund went down the river to the town of Liège, which stood on its banks. When it became known that a band of Northmen was on the upper river, and was likely to pass down, the alarm spread quickly through the town, and a council of the principal inhabitants was summoned. Before these Edmund told his story, and suggested that the fighting men of the town should march up the river and attack the Danes. "It is but a 2 days' march. The Northmen will be unsuspicious of danger, and taken by surprise, and so may be easily defeated." The proposition, however, was received with absolute derision. "You must be mad to propose such a thing, young Saxon, if Saxon indeed you are. But for aught we know you may be a Northman, sent by them to draw us into an ambush. No, we will prepare for their coming. We will man our walls and stand on the defensive, and if there be, as you say, but 300 of them, we can defend ourselves successfully, and we may hope that, seeing our strength, and that we are prepared for their coming, the Northmen will pass by without molesting us. But as for moving outside our walls, it would be worse than folly even to think of such a thing." After this rebuff, Edmund concluded that he could hope for no assistance from the inhabitants of the country, but must depend upon himself and the Dragon alone. He at once despatched 2 of his men, a Dane and a Saxon, with orders to journey as rapidly as possible to the rendezvous, where the Dragon was to be found at the mouth of the Rhine, and to beg Egbert to move round with all speed to the Maas. Having done this, he purchased a small and very fast rowing skiff at Liège, and taking his place in this with his 4 remaining followers, he rowed up the river. It took them 3 days before they reached the edge of the forest. On reaching their former hiding place they landed. The bushes were carefully drawn aside, and the boat hauled up until completely screened from the sight of the river, and Edmund and the Dane at once started for the encampment of the Northmen. They had been 10 days absent, and in that time great progress had been made with the galleys. They looked, indeed, completely finished as they stood high and lofty on the river bank. The planks were all in their places, the long rows of benches for the rowers were fastened in, the poop and the forecastle were finished and decked, A number of long straight poles lay alongside ready to be fashioned into oars, and Edmund thought that in another 2 or 3 days the galleys would be ready for launching. They were long and low in the waist, and were evidently built for great speed. Edmund did not think that they were intended to sail, except perhaps occasionally when the wind was favourable, as an aid to the rowers. Each would carry 150 men, and there were 30 seats, so that 60 would row at once. "They are fine galleys," the Dane whispered. "Sweyn has a good eye for a boat." "Yes," Edmund said, "they look as if they will be very fast. With oars alone they would leave the Dragon behind, but with sails and oars we should overhaul them in a wind. I wish it had been otherwise, for if, when they reach the mouth of the river, there is no wind, they may give the Dragon the slip. Ah, there is Freda." As he spoke, a tall maiden came out from the small hut. The distance was too great for Edmund to distinguish her features, but he doubted not from the style of her garments that it was Siegbert's daughter. There were other women moving about the camp, but the Danes were generally accompanied by their wives on their expeditions. But there was something in the carriage and mien of the figure at the door of the hut which distinguished it from the rest. She did not move far away, but stood watching the men at work on the ships and the scene around. Presently a tall figure strode down from the vessels towards her. "There is Sweyn," Edmund explained, seeing that the warrior possessed but one arm. "Ah, you know him by sight, then?" the Dane said. "I should do so," Edmund answered grimly, "seeing that it was I who smote off that right arm of his. I regret now that I did not strike at his head instead." The Dane looked with admiration and surprise at his leader. He had heard of the fight between the Saxon champion and Sweyn, which had cost the latter his right arm, but until now he had been ignorant of Edmund's identity with Sweyn's conqueror. Freda did not seek to avoid her captor, but remained standing quietly until he approached. For some time they conversed, then she turned and left him and re-entered her hut. Sweyn stood looking after her, and then with an angry stamp of the foot returned to the galleys. "I would give much to be able to warn her that I am present and will follow her until I rescue her from Sweyn," Edmund said. "Once at sea and on her way south she may well despair of escape, and may consent from sheer hopelessness to become his wife. Were it not that her hut is so strongly guarded at night I would try to approach it, but this cannot be done. I must take my chance in the day. Tomorrow I will dress myself in your garments and will hide in the wood as near as I can to the hut. Then if she come out to take the air I will walk boldly out and speak with her. I see no other way of doing it." On the following morning, attired in the Dane's clothes and helmet, Edmund took his place near the edge of the wood. It was not until late in the afternoon that Freda made her appearance. The moment was propitious. Almost all the men were at work on the ships and their oars. The women were cooking the evening meal, and there was no one near Freda, with the exception of the 2 armed Danes who sat on the trunk of a fallen tree on guard a short distance away. Edmund issued boldly from the wood, and, waiting till Freda's steps as she passed backward and forward took her to the farthest point from the guards, he approached her. "Freda," he said, "do not start or betray surprise, for you are watched." At the sound of his voice the girl had paused in her steps and exclaimed in a low voice, "Edmund!" and then, obeying his words, stood motionless. "I am near you, dear, and will watch over you. I have not strength to carry you away, but my ship will be at the mouth of the river as you pass out. Hang a white cloth from the window of your cabin in the poop as a signal. If we fail to rescue you there we will follow you wheresoever you may go, even to Italy, where I hear you are bound. So keep up a brave heart. I have seen your father, and he has sent me to save you. See, the guards are approaching. I must go." Edmund then made for the forest. "Stop there!" the guards cried. "Who are you, and whence do you come?" Edmund made no answer, but quickening his steps passed among the trees and was soon beyond pursuit. This indeed the Danes did not attempt. They had been surprised at seeing, as they supposed, one of their party addressing Freda, for Sweyn's orders that none should speak with her were precise. He had given this command because he feared that by the promise of rich rewards she might tempt some of his followers to aid her escape. They had therefore risen to interrupt the conversation, but it was not until they approached that it struck them that the Northman's face was unfamiliar to them, and that he was not one of their party. But Edmund had entered the wood before they recovered from their surprise. Their shouts at him to stop brought Sweyn to the spot. "What is it?" "A strange Northman has come out of the wood and spoken to the Lady Freda." Sweyn turned to his captive. She stood pale and trembling, for the shock of the surprise had been a severe one. "Who is this whom you have spoken to?" he asked.